Channel Top Wisdom. Today's topic is a grade 12 topic, which is the Cold War. This is a history topic. So this is basically for history learners. If you're not a history learner, don't even bother watching this video. But if you are a history learner, whether you are grade 11, you are interested in knowing topics of grade 12, you can watch. So this is the Cold War topic. I'm going to explain the Cold War topic and all the key points. I'm explaining the key points. I'm not actually explaining the whole essay itself because it's gonna be long. So I'm explaining the key points so that you can know what the Cold War is about, so that when you write an essay it becomes easier for you. So how did the Cold War period shape international relations after the Second World War? After the Second World War, there was a struggle between two world powers, the US and Russia. Why was it called the Cold War? The reason lay in the threat of the new and even deadlier weapons of nuclear technology that prevented outright open warfare. The Cold War was characterized by conflict through proxy wars, the manipulation of more vulnerable states through extensive military and financial aid and espionage and propaganda and rivalry and over technology, space and nuclear races and sport. Besides periods of tense crisis in this bipolar world, the Cold War deeply affected the newly independent countries in Africa and the liberation struggles in Southern Africa from the 1960s until the 1990s, when the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics (USSR) was dismantled. Did you know the term Cold War was used by George Orwell, author of the books satirizing Stalinism, Animal Farm? The detained friendship that existed between the Allied powers, the US, France, and Russia, after 1945 was no more. That military aid would be offered to each other when faced with Nazism fell away, and increased hostility was the order of the day. Some historians argue that it was in formulation and implementation of common policy documents by USSR for its East European territories that heralded the beginning of the different spheres of influence. Quickly, two distinct blocs emerged. So guys, as you can see, mostly the thing I want to say is that the Cold War, most people know it on grade 9 because the grade 9s learn about the Cold War. As far as I remember, I think we learned about the Cold War in grade 9. I don't know about your school, but you learn about Cold War, what is the Cold War in grade 9, as I think so. So this history paper, it might be paper 2 or paper 1, but I think it's paper 2. You can check it out. You can check the previous question papers so that you can get a clue, because it's very important that you check the previous question papers. You just don't study only, but you should check the previous question papers, just in case the teachers never told you to do that. It will be helpful in creating success for you. It will be helpful in making you pass at school. Most learners will understand that a war involves conflict between warring parties, that a war involves a use of weaponry amongst warring parties. But what is meant by cold war as opposed to a hot one? Common references to any war usually involves the type of war that involves weaponry, personal devastation, explosions, and most of the images of war. A Cold War will refer to a battle of ideologies where the protagonists do not face each other or fight each other directly. I think you guys know this. They have taught you this in grade 9, but if you forgot, I'm reminding you. The Cold War was characterized by different ideologies being imposed or sold to other countries. It is dissected the world into spheres of influence, with the United States of America (USA) as a champion of democracy and incidentally capitalism as well, pitted against the USSR, Russia, which stood as a beacon of communism. These divisions played themselves out in exporting of influence and then arms and money to countries sympathetic to, to either cause. The Cold War, which occurred from 1945 until 1989 or 1990, had far-reaching consequences for the world in general. Much of the literature during this period focused on the bipolar nature of the globe. Nation-states across the world, whatever explicit or not, empathized with either Russia or the USA. These countries became the battlefields for the competing influence of democracy, capitalism against communism, centrally planned economies. So learners might ask as to why this Cold War did not escalate into hot war. Where conventional means of warfare were employed, the reason lies in the proliferation increase of the nuclear weapons, so that if these weapons were ever used, the destruction that would follow will result in a global destruction. So this Cold War was fought behind the threat of the nuclear war. The Cuban Missile Crisis 1962 was probably the closest that the world got to a full-blown conventional war. The Cold War was a period of increased hostility between two blocs of power, USA and its allies, the one hand, and the USSR and China. On the other hand, from the end of the Cold War until the early 1990s, world politics events were primarily viewed through this lens, the battle to exert control and influence globally. The Cold War spread outside Europe to every region of the world and drew to a close by end of the late 1980s, early 1990s. Towards the end of the 1980s, Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev held conference with USA President Ronald Reagan. The USSR introduced reform policies aimed at restructuring perestroika and opening the Russia economy. In December 1989, after more than 4 decades, Russian President Gorbachev and American President George Bush declared the Cold War officially over. So this is how it went. These are all the key points that you need to know. So one of the things I need to explain is this, that Cold War in 1945, Cold War begins. I'm actually summarizing it now, which the source is timeline of events in Cold War. I'm actually explaining the timeline now. 1945, Cold War begins. 1946, Winston Churchill delivers his Iron Curtain speech. 1947, Marshall Plan is announced. 1948, February, communists take over Czechoslovakia. 1948, June, the Berlin blockade begins. 1949, July, NATO is ratified. 1950, February, McCarthy begins communism. And all. So as you can see here, I've written for you what you need to know. What happened in 1975, North Vietnam defeats the South Vietnam. And in 1979, USSR invades Afghanistan. So you can read it out here. Now you know the timelines, but I've already explained the key points. So guys, if you want another essay summary of history, you can check out in the description, which is the Vietnam War. I've already explained it. So check out in the description and like and subscribe. Like and subscribe for more videos. It is very important that you get more videos so that you can learn. Peace.